I mean, we spoke about so many, different aspects of living in Afghanistan, whether it's, during, like you said, the so-called communist times or the civil war, the Taliban rule. And then again, after that, a US-backed government. It was so tumultuous. Things were like changing. You guys traveled the country and saw the diversity there and, the relationships with their neighbors and how that affected Afghanistan. And then next thing you know, you guys are in America. So, and America, as we all know, very different. I would say maybe a little bit more homogenous, a little bit less diversity. I mean, there's a lot of diversity here for sure, but in terms of how the society's pretty homogenous. Tell us about how you guys made the adjustments that you had to make when you guys moved here, like the different cultural norms, the different societal norms. What shocked you guys? What did you not expect? And tell us about the opportunities you guys found here.
I think he came first, so you go first.
Yes, life in the U.S. Well, before you come into the U.S., of course, you have a perception. You have this thing you have seen in Hollywood. You have seen movies, right? I to better understand English and to better understand vocabulary and also add words. I used to see a lot of movies, and then I would actually write down dialogues of the movies, then open a Merriam dictionary, and then try and look up the words and what it meant and all that. So I had a perception. Now,
let me ask you, before you go, were you excited to come here?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's really hard for you to leave your homeland, thinking that you don't know if you're ever gonna go back or not. Of course, but the opportunity that you can give to your children, that's what actually causes you to actually leave and gives you the energy for you to make that decision and to come to the U.S. because I wanted to make sure that I give a better future for my children that I might not have had the opportunity, or my father did not have the opportunity, or the environment or the society was not in that I would say it wasn't aligned to give us that, right? So I wanted to do that for my children. So we were very excited, of course. When I came into the U.S., the first 6 months, as soon as I came into California. So the first 6 months, the very first thing they did is they take you to. Now it's gonna touch into a lot of subjects. The very first thing you do when you come into the country is they take you to they take you to the social services office. Okay, and then the social services office, they ask you to actually apply for ABT. So you do apply for ABT, and then your ABT and cash it starts because you came with a special immigrant visa. So your green card and your social security.
The infamous SIV.
Yes, the infamous SIV. So actually, your social security and also green card comes in automatically. You don't have to apply. You don't have to go. Back then, at least that was the case. I did not apply for it. It came in automatically because it was part of the process. So the first 6 months, I tried very hard to look for a job that's similar to what I did back in Afghanistan. So I tried offices, counties. I tried private businesses. So I was actually looking for a desk job. And something that, because I'm really good with data, I did a lot of analytics, and also I did a lot of regulations, rule making, and policy making, and all that. So I was looking for something like that, but I wasn't able to even land a single interview because competition in the U.S. is not as competition back home. Back home, if you are better at your skill in a field, you have a better chance of getting that job because there's not much competition. But in here, when you are applying for a position, it's not you applying for the position. Actually, 500 more people that applies. And your resume goes through a process of, back then, of course, it wasn't AI, but of course, computer would sort your resume before you can actually make it to actual person and talk to them. So I wasn't able to land that job. So the very first thing that I was able to get, which was totally different to what I did back home, was I started as a salesperson in a jewelry store. So that was shocking for me. That was the shock of me coming into the U.S. and seeing because I had met so many American counterparts. I used to even have a cultural awareness presentation for counterparts that would come into Afghanistan, because these are people that might not have been outside the U.S. All their life, and they're coming to Afghanistan to work with you. So I would gather them all in a class, and then give them a 2 hours presentation and tell them what Afghanistan is, what's the culture, what are differences, what are sensitivities, and when they're working in Afghanistan, what do they have to watch out for. So, but I didn't have that. When I came into the U.S., nobody gave me that cultural awareness. I did not have somebody who would give me the differences of me as an Afghan being in Afghanistan all my life and coming into the U.S. What are the things that I really have to look out for? One other thing that I struggled really, really hard was getting paid twice a month. That's not something we're used to back home. We get paid once a month. At least that was the case for me, and I know a lot of people that they get paid once a month. So that change, for you to actually budget accordingly, you require that information for somebody to actually give you that information ahead of time or to prepare you for it. But I did not have that. So that's the point of the excitement and also the shock that was in the very, very big beginning of me coming into the U.S.
Was your experience similar to that?
Not at all. I think it's a little different. Prior coming to the U.S., I used to work for U.S. Embassy, so I got used to life of how you live in U.S. and like paycheck to paycheck, but I was making enough there. It was like good enough for another year. So, but apart from that, when getting a job or coming here, I was excited, yes. But on the other hand, the way we left Kabul was very unexpected. We were expecting our second child, our oldest son, Adam. And they said, okay, let's rush. And we got here. Thank you to Mansoor John and his family and the rest of the families. They hosted us for 30 days, actually more than 30 days till the time we found our house. I think same like Samir John mentioned that everyone has his own perception. Okay, like U.S., there's a two ways, like how my business partner always talks. He said, Omar, I remember, like I was thinking when I come to U.S., I either see New York, like how you see a busy streets and like lights and a city never sleeps. On the other hand, and maybe like Texas, cowboy, and that's the two things. The moment we landed in San Francisco, I saw that 230 people standing on the same line, screaming kids and how it's hard to go through this line, and the Homeland Security. And I'm very thankful to one of those officers. He looked at it, I see my wife is pregnant. You can see her from her face, 15 and a half hours of flight. He said, you cut the line, come in. And they process. Then second, we go to the secondary office, 3 hours. Poor girl, she fall asleep on the floor. I mean, it's all right. Then we got out. And when we come out, we said, okay, is this U.S.? Especially San Francisco roads. The highway is like all cracked. Okay, it's another Kabul. And the second, I don't want to name the part of the town that I live right now. But I came towards the South Sac and I got apartment. It took us like very, very... thanks to a certain number of families, they helped us out to go through all the process. Same thing, SIV, all the stuff. Getting an apartment was very hard. Nobody was supposed to give us, their paychecks to at least just do a co-signer, because the others that had the same life and they wanted to just live on based on the cash aid and food stamp they had it. I don't want to go into detail of that, but I want to share a couple of experiences where every time I applied a job, it was very hard for me because my standard was very different than them. And they say I'm too overqualified. I'll keep that story to the end also. But it took me long time to get a job. Finally, there's a one and only place every single Afghan who can start a job easily is a vault. So you got to go to Apple Warehouse. I started my first job as at Apple Warehouse, I remember. And that was the first job. Slowly, then I got into the Uber and the other. But life... Kabul versus U.S. is absolutely different.
100%.
I think I was 31 years old when I got here, or 30 years old. In the 30 years of my life, I've been away from my mom and dad. I grew up with my grandparents. But life was very different. I used to help at the house, and it's just like, then when I started actually working, making money, I was just a money provider. My father used to bring all the groceries and everything, and I was just watching financial side of it. When I got here, I was a father. I was a person who had to financially support the family, and a partner and stuff. Like previously, I wasn't even care. In Afghanistan, when you have a baby for a couple of days, you're away. You're not supposed to get into that room. But in here, they send me to the labor room right away. Trust me.
They
It's
give
not
you the
like
cord
that
to
here.
cut.
Exactly. It's just like, okay. And said, all right, this is what I'm supposed to do. I don't know what they did, the cutting.
The umbilical cord.
Yeah, they gave me the, my hands were shaking. So, and I'm not going to do that. You know, you feel it's
I didn't do it.
but being in that environment suddenly is very, very hard. I learned things more. I'm thankful. I learned a lot of stuff here that I have never learned in Afghanistan. We just mentioned before we going on air, like how you can connect another socket to another one.
Yep.
I couldn't do it in back home. I mean, I could, but never took the courage to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Or use a drill or another stuff.
Yeah.
Or your father, I remember we went to the U-Haul. First time, he asked me like, Bachim, to go get the key. And I drove the 16-foot truck. I never drove a truck before. I just little, something like just regular car. Then next you go to 16, the 26, then bigger than that. This country is different. Kabul, when you start job and you finish, that's the limit. After 5 p.m., 6, 7, 8, you're done. You got home, no tension, no pressure. Tomorrow you have another day, let's do it. We do it. I worked like 16 years, non-stop. I never felt tired. But in here, you work 1 week. At the end of the week, ask me the question, then I'll answer, or you will answer the question by yourself. Here is tiring. Here is a system. You have to be on the cycle. You miss the beat, you miss the whole thing. Everybody will get after you. Say, why? Come on. I seen it, the way the operation works. If doctors stop coming to work, everybody's sick. There's so many call sicks. Then if a delivery man or a postman doesn't deliver, then half of the world doesn't know what's happening around them. And we are so connected. In here, I feel the value of relationships are getting a little apart because of we don't have time.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I miss, like you mentioned at the beginning, like where you would like to be, for one year. I'm thinking if I want to retire somewhere, I want to go back somewhere like where people value the relationship. It does. But here is too much pressure. Like you don't get it the time that you deserve. But you have to buy that time here. Back home you don't.
You don't have to buy it. Plus, you kind of think that maybe back home time wasn't. We were not living in the same in the same time frame, or in the same. I would say. How do you put this?
Time moved differently.
It's not even. Yeah, you could say that. Yes. So you would literally think that maybe we were in a different black hole, that time was applied differently in Afghanistan than it is over here. Because back home, you would work, but you would still have time for friends. You would have time for family. You would have time for everything, right? Here, you have to plan ahead of time for you to do anything. If you are planning on meeting with somebody, you have to at least plan that ahead of time, at least a week ahead, for it actually doesn't coincide with other stuff that you have, or you have appointments, for example. To some extent, I think when you look at life, this is the system that this country was built on, and they have accustomed to this system, and they have lived this way, and they have actually liked it or didn't like it, but they had to live the way that they live right now, right? Is it the best way of living? No. Why? Because if you watch Europeans, or you watch documentaries about Europeans, or their way of life, or their way of schooling, for example, their time is different. Their way of actually living is different. Their living standards are different than what is in U.S. They actually look at the U.S. and they laugh. But this is the system that they have applied, they have lived, and we have to just follow the masses. That's why that transition for us from the life back home to the life in the U.S., that's not an easy transition. So I have literally no family members who came into the U.S., stayed in the U.S. for 6 months, left, went back to Afghanistan for another 6 months back home, just for them to figure out and get to the right mindset and come back, because they were in shock. They're like, what the hell is going on?
Well, I would say that you guys adjusted pretty well, just because knowing both of you, I know you guys are very successful in what you do. And I know you mentioned that when you had to work in sales and jewelry, that was your biggest shock coming here. But, that's not the case anymore. Tell us a little bit about what you do now, and tell us which skills of yours helped you get to what you're doing now.
Now I work for a professional services firm as a senior consultant. I work with regulations. It's regulatory and legal support. And we work on projects with states and also the federal government. What brought me to this position actually was the work that I did back home in Afghanistan. 2021 was a turning point year for me. I started thinking because I worked in the jewelry space for almost 8 years, or 8.5 years, I would say. But then it's a different industry. I started as a salesperson. Within the first year, I was promoted as a store manager, and then I was then promoted as a business operations manager. And for a second jewelry store, I started with them as a marketing director. So I was responsible for marketing efforts of 17 stores, their online, social media, data analysis, of course, their ROIs, and also we did a lot of data and ordering and their social media and online, also their website. But that wasn't what I always wanted to do. I really always had in the back of my head, I always had that the job that I did back home, the differences that it would make. And you always look for a corporate life. You always look for that life and work balance. You can't get that in the retail industry. When you work in retail industry, you don't have that balance, especially when it comes towards the end of the year. That's the busiest time of the year. And when you work in the retail industry, of course, you have to work business hours or mall hours. So I really wanted to get away from that. And that's when I stumbled upon a friend actually who works in Deloitte, and she was the one who actually referred me to the position, and I applied. I went through the process, and I actually packaged everything that I have, or everything that I have done. I did not actually know that I could combine my experiences from the U.S. with experiences that I have back home, and I could package them together, because I always thought it might be irrelevant, but it actually was not, because my work in the U.S. taught me customer service, taught me how to deal with customers. Back home, I used to deal with delegates. I used to with delegations, with authorities, with Afghan counterparts, or European or other counterparts. But in here, when you're customer facing, that's a totally different scenario, because especially U.S. customer facing jobs, it's absolutely different. So that taught me a lot about my communication skills, about my people skills. I'm more of a people's person. I thrive when when I work in groups and I work with teams. So that's how I packaged everything. And I presented to this firm, and that's how I got hired.
What advice would you give to other Afghans that are in your position, that they worked in desk jobs and office roles and corporate or government style jobs, who have recently transitioned to life in the United States? What advice would you give them? Would you tell them to push for that same type of route here in America? Would you tell them to go straight away? Would you tell them to maybe take some different route to build the skills like you built your communication skills? Maybe build some other skills so that they could package that together. What would your general advice be for them?
the way that I see life, the way that I actually tell people. Sometimes I sound like a very old wise person that actually gives advice, or those AI generated videos. When I tell friends, family, anybody I know, I always reference it to my experiences, things that I've done that actually worked for me, things that I've done that didn't work for me. Easiest way to understand that is that if you are going on a path and you stumble upon a ditch, you tell the person behind you, hey, I stumbled upon this ditch, I fell, or I almost fell. Just, I want you to be cautious. Don't do this, because I have done it, I have seen it, right? That's how I look at life. I always tell them, I would have two advices for them. First is that if they would want to get into professional services, or they want to continue what they did back in Afghanistan, or they want to have a so-called a desk job, study something that's related to that so that you can leverage up on it. So here,
okay,
of course, study something that you can leverage up on that, and you can scale that talent and the experiences that you have and get better at what you do. Or if you are not getting into that, get a skill that can get you into entrepreneurship. You can build a business. US is the opportunity. Omar John is a prime example that this is the land where you can actually eat. This is I would say, the easiest land out of any country in the world that you can make a business in seconds. You just 3 clicks away from creating an LLC or a S corp or anything that you want to create. So easy. So if they're thinking and going business route, I would say find a niche or something that you're passionate about, or the skill that you have. Make yourself better in that skill and go for it. Those are the two advice I would have. I would not want them to just compromise on anything just because of the sake of it, because I did that. I was there. And I thought I would make a difference, and I would continue working in retail industry. But you are not getting anywhere if you're not the owner of that business. You have to always understand that, because you're working for somebody. But if you're working for corporate, of course you have a better future. You have the benefits that comes along, and you have a great life and work balance. But if you don't want that, I would say get a better skill or the business niche that you have, and then start that business.
Thank you everyone for joining us at the Majlis Podcast. We would love your support, so please like, comment, share, and subscribe.